And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes on Hitmix 88.9 WEIU and WEIU Television, along with your 13 if you have Consolidated Communications. My name is Jeff Owens. My co-host is Casey Berry.
Hello, everyone.
And our guest of honor today is Linda Kingery from WEIU Television. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
And Linda, the reason she's the guest today is because she is retiring after 40 years in the broadcast industry. She's 6 days, but no one's counting, is what she said off mic. So congratulations on the pending retirement.
Thank you.
I'm going to pull that mic a little bit closer to you, Linda, so everybody out there can hear you as well. Well, let's just talk about that. 40 years in the broadcast industry. Talk about the start a little bit and how you ended up at WEIU, if you would.
Well, my career started when I moved to Mattoon from the Champaign area back in 1972, and Ken Waddell offered me a position at WLBH Radio in Mattoon in the accounting department. And that's where I started, because I had come from American Seating in Champaign, where I worked in the accounting department there. And it was a little bit different because up there, we were assigned a certain specific area of accounting, and when I came to WLBH, it was the entire double entry book system. And so that was a little bit different. I was responsible for quite a bit more, and there was a learning curve there. And it was, from selling bleachers and Smitty blasters and backstops and chair seating to radio commercials was a little bit different, a non-tangible product. And we were located back then on the third floor above Thrifty Drugs in the old First National Bank building. No air conditioning, no screens on the windows, no carpeting on the floors. It was quite a treat.
That's interesting. And how long were you at WLBH then?
Altogether, about 20 years. I worked for them for a while, and then I moved to Western Kansas and worked for a radio station out there for a year. And then when I came back, when a position was open, I went back to WLBH.
Now, you did some research today. You were telling me that you maybe should have stayed in Kansas.
I should have stayed in Kansas. Missed my calling. I worked for a new station out there when I moved out there. It was KJLS in Hays, Kansas. And they went on the air as a country station. And I did their traffic and bookkeeping out there. And the station was owned by Larry Steckline, who ran KFRM out of Wichita, Kansas, and he also owned the Great Plains Farm Radio Network, which was an agricultural-oriented reporting of markets and animals and all in that area. And that was broadcast all over Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, and into Missouri. And I just pulled up Larry Steckline because I couldn't remember his partner's name. It was Max Sanders was the two owners in the station. And I should have stayed because Larry Steckline is a very wealthy man today. He owns malls and convention centers and all kinds of radio and TV stations, and quite a wealthy man.
That's interesting. Now, Casey, your career is just, hopefully going to start here after you leave WEIU soon, and now you're sitting next to Linda. What's going on in your mind when you talk to somebody who's getting ready to retire from broadcasting?
Well, I kind of want to pick your brain a little. I mean, how did you get started, and how did you? I mean, obviously you said that you went from accounting to,
Mm-hmm.
What made you make that transition into radio?
When I came to Mattoon, the job market was kind of slim. Job openings weren't publicized. And somehow Ken found out.
Did you have an accounting background?
Well, that I was moving to town, and that, I was someone they might be interested in. I had a work ethic and, was a responsible person and that type of thing. And so we talked quite early after I moved to Mattoon, like maybe, I don't know, January, February, March, somewhere around in there. But he didn't actually offer me a position until May. So I so for about 6 months, I was driving back and forth to Champaign.
Now, when
and,
you go ahead. I'm sorry.
And that got a little old.
In there. When you talk about the WLBH in the 70s, that's when that station was really in its heyday, and they were really doing some great stuff. Talk about WLBH in the 70s, and if you're not familiar with WLBH, it's an AM and FM combo station, still residing in Mattoon, but in the 70s, they were really a big station.
Right. They were an AM, their AM station was country, and a lot of talk. We had an open line program, which was kind of an open conversation program. People could call in and bring topics they wanted to discuss up. And we had, at 1 o'clock, we had an interview program for a half hour with different people. And once a month, we had the Social Security rep, and we had the home extension people would come once a month, and various other kind of sort of like this program.
Original
really.
Issues and Attitudes, I guess.
Yeah. And then at 1:30 we had the trading post for 30 minutes. Viewers could call in, our viewers, I guess they were listeners back then, they could call in with their garage sale items or something they were looking for, or something they had to sell or trade. And that was quite a hot program. It was pretty hard to get in some days. And the music back then was all played off of big albums, little 45s, and we had a large record library. And our FM back then was beautiful music, or what we referred to maybe as elevator type music. Jim Livesey at that time had just come back from the Navy, and he had kind of taken it over and was changing it. And we had a few other things, a few other programs on, like we had the John DeRemus show on it each night, and that was a syndicated program out of Chicago, and John DeRemus was a friend of Jim's, and so we carried his program out for an hour each night. And then Jack Horsley did his little, I can't think what
Interlude of Poetry.
Interlude of Poetry. It was this little poetry, and it was a little piece of poetry that had a good, if you thought about it, had a good thought to it, a good kind of, what do I want to say? Message or quip to live by, you know. And back then, our AM station was a daytime station, so we got to sign on at sunrise and off at sunset. So in the winter, we signed off like at 4:45, 4:30, 4:40, something that way. And then our FM signed off at midnight. And then eventually the FM went 24 hours a day.
Now, Casey, I'll fill you in on some information now. I went to work at WLBH while I was going to college here at Eastern in the 80s. Linda was there. When I graduated college, I went to work at a radio station, WMCI in Mattoon, which was located in the Thrifty Building, floor 2, which would have been where Linda started off. And now I'm at WEIU, where at Linda's here. So we've always kind of have a very similar background in terms of that. Which leads me to my real question here is that, you know, you obviously translated from an AM/FM radio station to WEIU TV. Your real job here is on the TV side. You're the television program director. You know, how did you go from accounting at WLBH, AM and FM, to, you know, TV programming?
Well, over the years at WLBH, the front desk person was always the traffic logging person, the one who logged the commercials. And from time to time, that person would leave, and then when that person left, that gap had to be filled. So I sort of filled in, you know, and learned the rules of television or of radio logging, which was, you know, you couldn't have more than 18 minutes of commercial time an hour, and you didn't put two competitors back to back, which I see them doing on TV now, and it just drives me insane. And especially political.
Yeah.
We were very picky about political candidates. No two competitors were in the same break. So if you had a break, it was all Republicans or all Democrats. It wasn't a mix and match like, you know, they do now. And so I would fill in there. And then, somebody would sell something and they needed a piece of script written, or they needed a commercial written at the last minute. So you kind of picked that up and you got the knack of that. And I was always pretty good in English, and so that was an easy thing to learn to do. And so that's how I learned the process of traffic logging. And so as I advanced, I was thinking down the road, I wanted that was a family-owned station, and the Liviseys were very, very good to me over the years, and I still stay in touch with them. And I thought, well, you know, I saw this position at Eastern open, and it was for a traffic person in TV, and I thought, well, that'd be something different, you know. And so I applied for the job, and I came over and I took the civil service test, and lo and behold, there are rules for civil service, and you have to be one of the top 3 score getters to get an interview, because they only interview 3 people. Well, I was the 4th name on the list. So I thought, well, there goes that thought. So about 6 weeks later, I get a phone call from Ken Bino and John Beabout saying that they had gone through the process, and my name was the next one on the list because the top 3 people had bowed out of the search. Yeah. So I was the next person. So I came over and I interviewed and was offered the job. And I came in November of 1992 to TV.
There you go.
And it was basically very, very similar. The process was a little bit different because at that point, WLBH had not become computer-oriented yet, and everything was still done manually. And so I had to learn the computer system then, and the special logging system for commercials. So that transition went pretty easy. Ken Bino was a pretty good teacher, fast talker, but a good teacher. and that's how I became acquainted then with TV. And I had about 6 students who worked in my traffic office, and back then in television, everything was on 3/4-inch videotape, which is sort of like a VHS tape, only much larger, a little longer, a little shorter in length, I mean, not longer, and different categories of, you know, tape length based on how long the show was. And they were stored in the library, very similar to records, so that part of the transition wasn't difficult, but...
Now, you talk about from 1992 here to 2012. I mean, talk about some of the changes you've seen here in our facility in terms of, you know, I know Buzzard has changed. We've had management changes, but the TV station has kind of stood out there as a public television station serving really at that time a smaller area, now to a gigantic area here in East Central Illinois.
Right. We were just basically on the local Mediacom cable system then, and now we're on Dish, we're on Direct. Over the air then, in 1992, in the early 90s, if you were over the air, maybe you could get us within 20 miles, maybe 25 miles. Now, over the air, you know, it's much farther. Our footprint is much farther. And as far as cable systems or carriers, our footprint has grown vastly. You know, before you could not get us in Effingham. Now you can. With Dish and Direct, we go to Decatur, Danville, Springfield, Rantoul. So our footprint has grown tremendously. We covered maybe just a few local counties, and now we're in over 20 counties.
So you've seen some, obviously the technology changes is amazing.
Technology has changed vastly, both in radio and TV. You know, radio was albums and 45s. Then we went to CDs, or cassettes and CDs, and now everything's on the server.
Yep.
And as far as television goes, we had 3/4-inch tape. Then we went to a Super VHS tape, and we went to a digital tape, but now everything's on, you know, a server. We do use some DVDs, but most of the stuff is on a computer server.
So to advise like a future broadcaster for Casey is, because some of the stuff you're talking about, she's never, you know, you never got to experience what albums were, carts or anything like that.
Right.
You know, what advice do you give a young person like Casey?
Enjoy change. I think I counted up 5 format changes in the 20 years I've been at WEIU.
So how do you go through like learning each? I mean, every format has a different, there are different styles and everything. You have to learn new things with each one. How do you go through like preparing yourself for that and really grasping each concept as you go along?
I think it's not that hard, really. As it's introduced to you, the light bulb just goes off, and you go, oh, okay, we can do that, or that works.
So going from tape or an analog something to all of this digital stuff we have. I mean, was that a big transition? I mean, was that difficult? I mean, was it?
Probably the hardest thing was going from analog to digital.
Okay.
I would say.
As a program director for a public TV stations, one of the luxuries that you got to do for the past 20 years is you got to travel a lot of different places to go on. They call them programming buying trips, Casey. I'm not sure I'm buying that, but you've got to see a lot of the country. Excuse me, meet some people, and talk about the places you've been and some of the people you've met.
That's an interesting question, because I have been very fortunate to meet a lot of famous people. When I worked out in Kansas, western Kansas, with Larry Steckline, their thing was to have concerts. They had concerts in the gym there, and they would sell tickets. And I got to meet stars like Porter Wagner and Roy Clark and Buck Owens and people like that. And then I didn't see so much of that at WLBH. It was because we didn't do concerts and that type of thing. And that was just something that they did out there to promote their facilities. And they also kind of had an inline track with Roy Clark and his group, because they, along the line, were part owners in some of the stations that Larry had founded. So that was where they came into play. Then, and these truly are buying trips that I go on. And not only are they buying trips, but they are, they bring you up to date on what is coming out, the new shows that they're working on and the producers are working on, and new concepts of how to do things. And you have meetings on different types of areas that you work with, and they also share with you, and get a chance to speak to the producers of the show, and as well as the distributors of the show.
And one of the things that I wanted to bring up, not to make this a sales pitch for WEIU, is but you have to go out and buy programming. People think that TV programming is free, but we have to find money to give to people like you to go out and buy it so we can put programming on.
And the easiest way for your distributors, and you're free to buy from anyone, but the PBS affiliation has specific distributors that are tried and true, and you don't have to worry about their product. It's timely. It's there when they say it's going to be there, but they also have to go out and contract that. And so when you go to these marketplaces, they show you clips of the show so you can see what you're buying, and then the pricing is based on the size of the station. So because we are a smaller station, we don't pay as much as WTTW in Chicago would pay for the show. And so your pricing is all there, and you pick and choose. And I've always had a budget to spend, and my budget is usually based on a year. And so I've had to be selective in what I buy. It's probably been about 12 or 13 years ago, I did a survey, and I had the wonderful help of the Journal-Gazette and the Times-Courier, and also we used the Paris Beacon and the Effingham Daily News, and we inserted our one-sheet flyer in those newspapers, and the viewers could fill it out with what they wanted to see, what they liked to see, when they watched, and various questions like that. And then they could fold it up and return it to us. And that gave us a very good idea of who our viewers were and what they wanted to watch. And so I used that as a guideline to buy programming. And Jeff was kidding about the marketplaces that I went to. Well, as an incentive, they have what they call a producer showcase. And it's usually the next to the last night of the event, of the conference that you're at. And we sort of refer to it as trick or treat, if you know what I mean. They usually set up in a big room, and you go through and you get to talk with the producers and the distributors, and you put your business card in the fishbowl, and you might win a prize. And they give you little trinkets or stuffed animals or jackets or sweatshirts or fleece throws and various other things with the logos of the various shows on it. Well, I happened to win one trip, a trip to Belize for 2, all expenses paid. So I checked with the vice president who was in charge of our area to make sure that it met the ethic guidelines and that so that I could accept the trip. And so my husband and I went to Belize. And it was Christina Cooks out of Philadelphia. And Christina is a vegetarian cook, and she does a television show. And she's also on the Food Network. The only stipulation was I had to eat vegetarian for 10 days. But it was worth it.
Oh, but that'd be neat.
A couple years ago, I also won a trip through Pogo Productions for the 4th of July concert on the National Square in Washington, D.C., and that was a pretty nice trip. And I added a couple extra days to that out of my own pocket to extend that trip a little bit. But
when you talk about, you're also one of the folks here that deals with the viewers of the TV station. Over the years, have their viewing habits changed or what they want on WEIU TV, or has it kind of stayed the same?
It's pretty much stayed the same. They love the music programs, and we get a lot of phone calls on our Nature and Nova, and Classic Gospel is one of the big favorites right now. Kind of surprising. I don't receive as many phone calls for Lawrence Welk, although I think if we took it off the air, they probably would call and complain. And people love our DW German programming in the mornings. And
is there a favorite program over the year that you've bought and then really enjoyed as well?
Gosh. Antiques Roadshow, maybe? Because it's amazing to me the things that people find in their attic, and you think it may be worth something, but you have no idea. And then these people discover that, it's worth thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I may be going pre-Linda Kingery at WEIU, and if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Linda Kingery from WEIU TV. She's our program director who is retiring at the end of May. There was a controversy, and I don't know if it was in the late 80s or mid-90s, about the show Combat. Were you here then? I remember people didn't want us to air it.
I don't believe... No, it was before I came. And there was another show that was purchased before I came that there was some controversy over. And I think maybe they thought the violence in it.
That's what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
know.
Did those things affect you in the way that you really went out and purchased programming because you knew that some of the TV listeners didn't want that type of stuff on WEIU television?
I would say it did probably a little bit, because back then, too, we had Little House on the Prairie, and we would renew that contract, and people loved that. And another thing that we had early in the 90s, we bought a Disney film package that had a lot of Disney family films on it, and probably today one of the scariest or largest purchases is the movie package, because that you purchase. It's only good for 2 years. There's 100 titles usually, and you will buy it for 1 2-year period. And I just a couple years ago repurchased it, and I think we have another year on it. And I'm seeing some of the same movies in this package that were in the other package.
Oh, well, that's kind of neat.
So that's kind of you would expect them to be all different, but they're not all different.
About 3 minutes left, Casey, anything on your mind?
Well, how do you handle, when we get phone calls, complaints, or compliments, are people saying, I want to watch more of this, or, I don't think, take this off, or whatever. How do you handle that? How do you deal with how everybody, Because, I mean, that's a lot to take in. Not only are you trying to program, but you're also trying to make everybody
satisfy
happy.
a customer.
Yeah.
Really, I have not, in all my career, I've probably only received 2 really controversial phone calls. And you have to be polite and explain to them why you didn't carry something or why you did carry something. And it's not always my choice that we carry or don't carry something. Management does have a bit of a say in that, but you just be frank with them and explain to them. Most of the viewer calls I get, though, are someone has seen part of a program, they missed part of the program, they want to know if it's going to re-air, and I take down their name, their address or phone number, and then I date it. I have this very sophisticated Post-it note system on my wall. Everybody sort of laughs at it, but I put the Post-it note on a bulletin board on my wall, and then I peruse through it every once in a while, and I will either call them, email them, or send them a little hot pink postcard when their show is coming up. And as far as disgruntled viewers, things happen like
last night, the power could go out.
Or a tape breaks, or the equipment freezes, or the satellite feed drops out. And you just explain to them that there was what the problem was, and it can't be helped. I mean, things happen.
I'm going to ask you this. What will you miss the most about WEIU TV and radio?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. The people, I think. I think the people.
All right, we got a minute and a half to go. Is there anybody out there you want to thank, mentors in the business, or the floor will be yours?
Well, I have to thank, I would say, the Livesey's for my start. Ray Livesey was fabulous with mentoring you, and he even gave me occasionally a trip somewhere with him to a meeting, a one-day meeting in his airplane with him and LaFell. And even Jim and Shirley, his son and daughter, over the years, I've stayed in touch with them from time to time. And I just spoke with Shirley over the weekend. And to Ken Bino, he was another great mentor and a very great teacher to the students at Lakeland.
Yeah, he was a great guy. He was.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you also, you better mention somebody that you're married to on this show.
Oh.
Old Maxie.
Well, good old Max. He keeps me, when he sees something that he doesn't think is like it should be, he'll tell me. And he's a Song of the Mountain fan, and so he'll, keep me informed of whether he liked the specific episode of Song of the Mountain, and he likes Antiques Roadshow too.
There you go.
So,
well, Linda Kingery, on behalf of everybody at WEIU TV and radio and the students and the workers that you work with, we appreciate the hard efforts you put in. 40 years of the broadcast industry, a few days left before you retire. Enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
All right. And Casey, no show next week to Memorial Day. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Linda, again, thank you very much, and everyone have a great day. This is Hit Mix and WEIU.